Hello, and we thought we'd try something slightly different. This is going to be a Meet the Council member podcast, and I'm going to interview Lyndsay and have a chat about who she is outside of council, how she got into veterinary nursing, how she's progressed through her career, where she is currently at the moment, what she does outside of nursing when she takes off her veterinary nursing uniform, who is she, and what she does on council. This is a new thing for 2024, and I hope you enjoy. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to whenever you're listening to this podcast. Welcome to the BVNA Meet the Team podcast. So this is a new one that we're going to try and we're going to do over the next couple of months. The plan is moving forward. We're going to introduce all of the council team. We're going to introduce some of the office team as well as that who work in the office in Harlow, and without them we couldn't do what we do. But what we're going to do for the first couple of episodes is take one episode each, and it is my pleasure to do a Meet the Team today with Lyndsay. So yeah, I've sent you some questions beforehand, so this wasn't big and scary. Yeah, who are you, Lyndsay?
People are going to get bored of my voice, aren't they? Who am I? I don't know. Who am I? I'm the BVNA President.
BVNA President. So a little bit about you. How long have you been nursing for, and how long have you been qualified? And I know that's a terrible question to ask somebody.
Oh, no, it's fine. So I've been nursing since 2003, but I have been qualified since 2012. So I had some health issues, which delayed my qualification. So I had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. I'm happy to talk about that. And so unfortunately that then put things back for me. So when I started my nurse training, I was doing portfolio. And then when I came back to it again, it had moved on to the NPL, and I couldn't carry it over, which was quite frustrating. But that's by the by.
That was a long time ago.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, anybody who's watching the podcast, you are going to see whenever I'm on this. This is my cat. He's 17, 18. This is Pumpkin. He has the loudest voice known to catkind. And I apologise if you see his bottom because he keeps showing it in the camera. Sorry, so we go back to Lyndsay. Did you always want to be a nurse, or is it something you just fell into?
No, do you know what? I was at school a long time ago, and I did my A-levels. And I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I did business studies, biology, German and chemistry. And I worked at a farm when I was younger. I had a local farm. I probably really irritated them because I went down when I was about 12 and was like, can I have a job? And they were like, no, you can't. You've got to be 13. So I went down on my 13th birthday and I was like, I'm 13 now. Can I have a job? So that's what I did. And I really enjoyed that. I mean, it was a farm park that was open to the public, but it was a working farm. So they were a predominantly sheep farm. They did have beef cows as well. So I really enjoyed that side of stuff. I was working there throughout foot and mouth as well. So on the weekends, it was minimal staff there. Obviously, it was no public. So it was just myself and one other person because I lived closest, apart from the people who obviously own the farm. So I would go down on Saturday and Sunday. Absolutely loved it. So decided that's what I wanted to do. Had a place to do agriculture and land and farm management at Harper Adams. Went and had a look round. And if I'm honest, what swayed me, because I looked at a couple of other universities as well, was the fact it had the longest student union bar at that time in the country and the men to women ratio. So that's what made me decide. And then about 2 weeks, literally 2 weeks before I was due to go, I was like, you know, I don't know whether this is the right thing for me. I don't know actually really whether it is something, where am I going to go career-wise? And a friend of mine at the time was a veterinary nurse. She used to work at the farm that I worked at. She'd obviously left and done her training, and her husband was a vet. And so they talked to me a little bit about it. And she said, why don't you do this? Like, I did it this way. It was great. I was very lucky. I sent my CV to probably I think maybe 10 practices fairly close by. And I got a call the next day to say that they had a student position available. So I was really, really lucky. You know, when things are just, you feel like align and are supposed to happen. And at that point, my family, we lived in Surrey, but mum and dad were relocating to Lincolnshire. And they were quite happy to do that because they thought I was going to university. My brother was settled in job and my younger sister was going with them. So I just literally called them and said, I'm not going to uni now, but I have got a job and it does come with accommodation. So I'm good. So yeah, that was 2003.
And was that small animal, or did you do some farm animal there as well?
No, it was all small. Yeah, all small animals. I continued to work at the farm on the weekends because for those of us that have been veterinary nurses for a long time, the salary was not very good, especially as an obviously unqualified nurse, a student nurse. And I had to pay for my accommodation out of my wages. So I literally each month, I think, probably had about £100. So I continued to work. So I basically did like 7-day weeks for as long as I could, but I was young.
Yeah, I remember I did the apprentice scheme as yourself, and I believe when I started I was on £50 a week, and I think when I was in second year I was on £70 a week. So it was abysmal.
Yeah. I think my salary was something like £6,500 a year. But that's not why. It's not why anyone, obviously, and there's a lot that's changed and a lot for the better. And I think, obviously, if you look at the change in salary from when you and I first started to what it is now, it's still, don't get me wrong, not enough. Right. But it is, if you'd have said to me 20 years ago, roughly the average nurse salary, we're looking at around 30 grand, I wouldn't have believed it. More needs to be done, but it's definitely better.
But that was 5 years salary as a student. It wasn't great, and there has been progression, which has been it's needed to happen. It's been really good. So how did you find doing education? I know you said that you had to take a small break due to health issues. But how did you find the education, your portfolio and your NPL, and also your OSCEs, and then also balancing work balance and trying to find all of those men at the long bar by the sounds of things?
I think I struggled because it's a different kind of learning. So I think your A levels are a little bit like that. And so, sorry, I had a year out as well, I should say. I didn't go straight from A levels through to nursing. I was always going to have a gap year. So I had a year where I just worked on the farm for a year. But I think, I think that's the difficulty, isn't it? Is actually it's self-learning, isn't it? But I think probably I was okay because I had not long since come out of mainstream education to go into that, and I'm an applied learner anyway, so I think being able to do it the way I did it was fine. There weren't very many veterinary nursing degree courses when I started in practice. I don't think it was a very big thing then at all. So no, I don't think I found it too hard. I think I found then having my gap and then coming back to it again, because a lot had changed from, with the things that had happened, but my confidence, that kind of stuff, being out for a while. And I just wasn't sure. I hadn't had the best experience in one of the practices that I'd worked in. With nurses, student nurses, I'm going to use student very loosely in that situation because there were aspects where I wasn't in education, were being utilised to do things without appropriate training. And it was in an era where perhaps actually, now we were talking about this day at an event I was at. Now, hopefully, students feel much more comfortable to say, I'm not comfortable in this situation, and raising awareness of it. But back in those days, it was the norm. So we just did it. And I was probably, being the age that I was, not comfortable enough to say, this doesn't feel quite right. So it knocked my confidence from that point of view. And I spent a couple of years just playing with horses instead. I was very lucky. It was a lovely yard in Surrey where there were some very expensive horses kept on livery that people didn't do a great deal with. So it was great. I had a lot of fun until I realised I was too old to do that anymore. So then going into my OSCEs, I think because I'd had that time out of practice for me, so I came back to it and then finished off my NPL and then did my OSCEs. So I was probably in my late 20s when I did my OSCEs. How old am I now? Yeah. So I think actually it's harder I don't know, I found it harder than I would have done, I think, if I was younger. I think I overthought things. And there wasn't as much as there is now with regard to like the college support, university support, and getting you through those OSCEs. So it's really, really quite daunting. And I also didn't have the time in practice, not necessarily in practice, but the opportunity to come into practice to practice. So that's one thing that I do make sure that my students now, and I will, and again, like I said, lots of things before, I know I'm very lucky that I'm in the position I am in practice where I can make that happen, and I know that's difficult for a lot of people to achieve, but I like to make sure they've got that time in practice, or at least the opportunity to come in. It does have to be student driven, and I was a very driven student, but yeah, I think I did find that bit harder because I'd had that bit of time out.
Yeah, and I think it's still happening now. I believe it's getting better with the OSCEs and the prep and it being time in practice. And I think it's something that I know it's something that behind the scenes in BVNA at the minute, we're working with the VCAs and we're working on a clinical coach toolkit to kind of help those things move through. So in the future, guys, hopefully we'll have some more resources out there available. So you qualified, and then what happened then? Where are you now in your journey?
So I am one of the directors of an independent small animal hospital in Wiltshire, and my job is non-clinical. So I'm basically the operations director for the practice. And so even as a student just before I qualified, I had a leadership role. It's something that I feel very passionate about, supporting people and developing people. So I was referred to as a team leader. Obviously, I wasn't any kind of nursing title in that because I wasn't qualified. And then I've been in head nurse roles, nursing manager roles, operation manager roles, and then it's kind of evolved into where I am today. So yeah, it doesn't seem like very long from qualifying to this point, but it's probably, like I say, before I qualified. So we're looking at maybe the last 13 years I've had leadership roles.
But you do still do work in clinic, don't you? You still...
Yes, so just for fun. So my normal job is a full-time role, and I work in Swindon, so I work in Wiltshire, which is where the hospital is that I'm one of the directors of, but I live in Lincolnshire, so we relocated to be closer to family. And if I could, in the practice that I am one of the directors of, I would try and do be part of the weekend rota so I can keep my clinical hand in, but it's just not practical because I have a young family, husband and life in Lincolnshire. So once a month there was a role that came up at another independent practice in Lincoln, doing a night shift on a Sunday. So that's what I do once a month so that I can play with inpatients, because medical nursing is my thing. Or was my thing. So I do that just for me. It's nice to go into a practice where I was about to say can just be a nurse. It's never just a nurse, let's be clear there. But what I mean by that is obviously I don't have any responsibility with regard to safeguarding staff or anything like that, following processes and protocols, or implementing processes and protocols. It's nice to go in and follow someone else's processes and be responsible for the inpatients that I'm looking after and nurse. It's nice to do that.
And I believe it's a very small world because you occasionally bump into our editor.
I do. Very, very bizarrely. So our editor-in-chief of the BNJ, Nikki, who we've talked about in a few podcasts, is a very experienced veterinary nurse. And again, to keep her hand in clinically, she does one day a month at practice. And we didn't realise until she was the Saturday nurse handing over to me as the Sunday nurse. So yeah, you can imagine our excitement when we saw each other. That was lovely.
So regarding your job, what's something that you love about your job? What keeps you there? What keeps you in the veterinary nursing profession?
For me, it's the progression of the profession. There it is again. And it's developing people. So I love the fact that I am able to, in our practice, be able to offer nurses opportunities that I never had previously. But but also to, you know, not just nurses, it's our client care team as well. It's all members of our practice, and actually, you know, having this holistic, like I said, one team approach. And I love it. I love the fact that I am very fortunate enough to work with a team of, so my co-directors, seeing, you know, having the foresight to think actually having a nurse as part of their director leadership team was a really valuable asset. For ages, I used to be thankful for having that role until they've beaten it out of me to say, you don't thank us, like you should be in that role. But actually, yeah, so them being that forward thinking, really, because it was 5-6 years ago that I joined the directorship. So, you know, it was fairly forward thinking. But yeah, to be able to then have now, you know, like I said to you before many times, dissolve the head nurse role, have multiple lead nurses. So we've got that opportunity for people to progress. And yeah, all areas of our practice, someone's got some responsibility so that they own that. And it's great. Yeah, I think it's my team. I think probably a lot of people say that, but it's the team, not my team, sorry, the team, because they don't need me there to run that practice. They do that completely by themselves. But it's just great to be part of that.
Really nice thing to say for them. And that's what you love. Is there anything you find challenging?
Yeah, I think everyone finds difficult conversations challenging, don't they? Unfortunately, you know, one of the things I hope we have in our practice is a no blame culture. It's really important so that people can freely talk about any issues. But I still think having to have that conversation with somebody, you know, even discussing something that maybe didn't go quite as you had planned for whatever reason is not an easy conversation, because you never want to upset anybody. And ultimately, I think no matter how you have that conversation with someone, sometimes the person who maybe perhaps something hasn't quite gone to the way, you know, they would have liked it to, they're always going to feel awful about it. But we still have to have that conversation. So those kind of things, no one likes that.
No, it is difficult. So that's your work, that's your nursing, that's what you do. What about you outside of nursing? Who is Lyndsay outside of nursing? What happens when you take off your nursing uniform and you're a mum and a wife?
Yeah, I think, well, that's it really. So not that nursing is my identity, but yes, I do have a nearly 9-year-old and a 6-year-old and 2 dogs. I've got a tortoise, an elderly cat, my husband. So yeah, life has always been very busy for us at home, and that's how we like it. I think if I had time, I don't know what I would necessarily do with it. My grand plan in the future is to have a horse again. So I did have one a while ago, but it's just having the time. So I'm living through my daughter at the moment. But yeah, no, it's just about spending time. I'm very lucky, even though I, you know, work away from home, which is hard. It's really hard, especially little things like my son tomorrow has got a day at school where they have to dress up as something from medieval times, and so I've ordered him an outfit that's going to come. My husband's going to put him in it, and then at some point we'll talk about it. So not being, it's very small, but not being at things can be quite difficult. But then at the same time, when I leave, and I've got better at doing this because it is not always easy, but when I drive away from the practice on a Thursday night, the 3-hour journey home is my time for self-reflection and thinking about processing bits and pieces. I work from home on Friday, so then I get to follow up on quite a lot of stuff. And then my weekends, because my husband, like I said to you, is no longer in the police, whereas he was before, it means that we can spend quality time together as a family. Don't get me wrong, when it comes to Sunday night, I'm looking forward to going back to work again a lot of the time. But yeah, so it's at the moment with the age that my kids are, it's very much family time. But I enjoy that. And I think not having that for part of the week makes it even more, even doing homework. My son's homework is normally on a Sunday, and I enjoy sitting down with him and doing that as well. So yeah, that's probably me outside of work at the moment.
And is there anything that you do in your free time to just let your hair down, to just relax?
Spending time with friends, I think. My one advice as a working mum is finding yourself a good mum friend. Now, I know I'm not old by any account. I say I'm not old, but I am 40 and I do have a 6-year-old son. So when I go and pick him up from school, I do feel like one of the older mums. So I do have an older mum friend as well. We're at the same stage of life. We're going through perimenopause, whereas obviously a lot of the children in a lot of the parents in my son's class are having more children. We're very much well and done with that. And just being able to, moan about parenting stuff, or, in the nicest possible way, moan about my husband. I'm sure he moans about me as well. Just being able to let off steam with somebody who isn't, and my friend isn't veterinary related. So I don't tend to talk about the issues that I have at work. I mean, she would definitely listen, but I just think it means that I don't, and I talk about stuff that's, important outside of my day job, which is quite nice to do.
And that I think the good advice. You need a friend to talk to, and it's difficult sometimes if all your friends are in the veterinary profession that we just talk about how big was that pie we saw, or something along those lines. And I'm sure we all do that, and everyone who's listening will be the same. Yeah. So let's talk about your council journey. Difficult one. Why did you put yourself forward for council?
Because it was COVID. And I thought, why not? Because it wasn't stressful enough being director of a veterinary practice during COVID. I think it was something I thought about doing anyway. And it had just come up, and it was one of those rare occasions, obviously, where I was, because I wasn't, because of where I live and where I work, I was remote working for a fair bit of time because we weren't allowed to travel, obviously. And then even when we could travel, you still couldn't go out and do anything. So I just had time, and I was like, well, I can't sit around and not do anything. And I feel very strongly about, in particular, sort of leadership roles for nurses. So that's kind of what made me apply to begin with. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. But I think I was naive to think, I think I hadn't thought sort of broader. I just thought, and I guess you have to, for your manifesto, you have to think about the things that are important to you and what you want to bring to council, and that's how you get voted on. But actually, that's just one very tiny part of what we have achieved whilst we've all been on council together. So that's that. And I was very fortunate. I worried because I'm not a big social media person, and I know that there was a few people on council that had social media presence, so I worried that I wouldn't maybe fit in because I don't have that same journey. But everybody was lovely, really receptive. I was very lucky to have so Alex Taylor is my mentor, who has now become a great friend. And I think I would have been lucky with any mentor, but I think I definitely landed on my feet having Alex. And just everybody I found that I spoke to, I don't know if you felt the same, just been really pro, like building you up, supporting you, developing you. So Alex encouraged me to go for an officer position after my, I can't even remember, was it my first year? Yeah, it would have been first year, yeah. So she encouraged me to go for an officer role, which I did, and became honorary secretary. And then following year, she encouraged me to apply again and became JVP, and the rest is history. But I think, I've been very lucky to work with a lot of fabulous people. And I do go on to council and think, for a very long time, thought, I don't deserve to be here. I'm not good enough to be here. Look at all these amazing people. But everyone has just always made me feel really welcome and been really lovely. And like I said, in various podcasts, the staff in particular, especially for me in my presidential role. And I knew that they would be, because Alex had already forewarned me that they would be really supportive, but they are incredible. And, you worry about asking something, and they probably had that same question, especially Angie, a million times over the last 30 years. But she never comes across as being frustrated. Everyone is just brilliant, and I'm really lucky.
Yeah, and that's how we met. We did our manifestos, and we were up against each other in that battle to get onto council. And I was the same. And like you said, there was certain names and faces that you saw in there. Alex Taylor was one of them. Jack Pye was in with another one there. Lacey Pitcher put herself through, and there's all these names of giant social media, and our manifestos must have been something special to get us on there. And I think, like you, we'd never look back, we'd never change where we are. And like you, I blame Alex for putting us both into so, cheers, Alex. What do you enjoy most on council?
Oh, definitely spending time with people, definitely. And I think like you never stop learning. Like we had a meeting last night, and a new council member made a suggestion which was just phenomenal, and I was like, that's brilliant. And I love the fact that wherever we are, it's a safe space. And you know, like we said before, you can ask a question that you don't know, I suppose, that someone might have asked a million times already before, prior to you. And it might not have been the right time before, and it might now work this time, or it might not work at all. But no one ever says, we've tried that before and it didn't work. They're all like, okay, yeah, let's hear that. And so yeah, I think it's definitely just the people. You just come away and you feel like you're lifted. You feel like you can make a difference, and that's really cliche, because it might be like we've talked about the Protect Title campaign. It's building blocks. It's never going to be that you come away and it's done. You might just be part of that history, but it's great to be part of it, to be able to say I was on BVNA Council for however many years. It's brilliant. Yeah,
I think just to say you were on it for a short period of time is putting a disservice to what you actually do. It's the amount of work that goes through, and the legacy that you will bring forward, and will be there, will be there forever. At this moment in time, and you have still got a long time left on council, what's your proudest moment at the moment?
Oh God, that's a really difficult question. That's so difficult. I suppose for me, I have to say becoming president, because actually, my husband came and saw that, and so did some of my nurses from my practice, which was just really lovely to see that and their support. And yeah, so I think that that has to be it, really, doesn't it, at the moment? But there's so many things that I have been fortunate enough to be part of that, you know, my name might not have been there at the front. I might not have been leading it, but I might have inputted something to it. And so I think anything really that we do on council, I'm really proud to be part of. But yeah, I guess I probably have to say becoming president was fairly up there.
Yeah, definitely. And what are you excited about for the rest of your future on council? What are you excited to see in the next 12-18 months?
So you as president.
Oh, scary times.
One of the things I really, really love, and I don't always get it right, absolutely, but is progression of, and I know that's my theme and I keep saying it, but it is like I am actually quite an introvert, as you know, and I don't like being front and center, which is why it's really very strange that Alex coerced me into this role. I like to be the person in the background, and it might surprise people because of my role as well that I do during the day, but I feel like I'm fortunate to be in that role so that I can make those differences for other people. They might not always appreciate it, but it's there. And so for me, it's development of others. So I think what I'm really looking forward to is the officer team we have currently is seeing them progress throughout this year. And then obviously not obviously, people might not know, but officer applications for next year are in as of January, and then they'll start to be interviewed. So seeing the team that comes together for your year as president, and then being there whilst watching you flourish, that's what I'm really looking forward to.
Thank you. That means an awful lot. And to know I'll have you as my right-hand woman is amazing.
As long as you keep pouring my wine.
Yeah, as long as I keep pouring the wine. We'll do 3 more questions and then we'll wrap this up. Okay. Where do you see the future of veterinary nursing?
Oh gosh, I think the possibilities are endless. Absolutely. I think if we can get this legislative reform, see, I nearly couldn't say it then, and review the Veterinary Surgeons Act, I think that is going to, and that is going to happen. It has to happen. That will make such a difference to us as nurses, because we will have to review everything. So obviously protecting the title, whether that comes before then or as part of that, is still to be decided. but it will happen. I'm really confident that we've made, it started sort of in Alex's year, this latest attempt at protecting the title. And I think all of that work that has been done beforehand that I say I will do, I won't, it's a team, and that you will continue to do in your year as heading up that team. I just think I'm just really excited. I think it's a fabulous time to be a veterinary nurse. I don't think those coming in now maybe will appreciate that, but that's our job. That's us crusty oldies to keep telling people about actually what they can do, and to get them to be part of that as well will be amazing.
Yeah, I am going to stop hanging around with you if you keep calling us both old. Just as a sideline. So, leading straight on to that, what advice would you give for people who may be thinking of joining council?
Oh gosh, just do it.
Just do it.
Just do it. Honestly, I know we talked about this in another podcast before. I would, what's stopping you? Because like we've talked about already, it's a really supportive group of people and the staff. You get to be as much a part of something as you want to. So you can bring your own ideas and suggestions of things that we can do. You can be part of existing teams. Everybody is listened to, and we might not always be able to carry out everything. There's a lot of people that want to do a lot of things, but we can certainly as a team come together and prioritize what we think will be, beneficial overall. So just do it. Like honestly, I'm so glad that I've done it, even though it's completely out of my comfort zone. And I guess that in itself is, I was on the fence. It wasn't something that I felt hugely comfortable with. Even when I got that call, I remember to say, you've got a place. I was still like, oh God, what have I done? Just because it's totally not something that I feel comfortable doing. I'm like, what will I have to bring to the table? And every single nurse has something, student nurses has something. We're all different, we're all individual. And, even looking at the manifestos for the year that we applied, everybody had something that was slightly different. So just do it. Yeah.
And everyone's amazing. And everyone who applies for council is amazing, even if you don't get on. And if you're unsuccessful one year, put yourself forward for another time. I know that's happened. We've had a couple of council members who've applied 2-3 times before they've got on, and they've been spectacular while they've been on council.
Yeah.
So the last question before we wrap this up, and it's a bit of a thinker. If you could go back and tell your younger version of yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
That's a really good question. It's really difficult to answer. I suppose knowing now and where I am now in life and my role is I used to be quite a reactive little bean. I used to be quite opinionated, and I could be quite hot-headed. Basically, my daughter that I am now dealing with is me. I think it's really important, if you make a mistake, that you learn from it and that you have self-awareness and you self-reflect. I think there is obviously a balance there, because you don't want to be self-reflecting for too long, because that can also have a detrimental effect. But I think it's okay. It's okay to say, that's probably what I would say to myself, actually. It's okay to say that you got something wrong. It's okay to say you could have done something better. It's not a weakness to ask for help. And I think that's something that I did struggle with. And I think for me, qualifying, I had a chip on my shoulder for ages. Someone would say to me, well, how long have you been qualified for? And I would always say, I've been qualified since this point, but I have been in practice for this many years. And it's because, and I did it sort of at the start of this podcast as well. And actually, it doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me to say now that I've been in practice for this long and I've been qualified for this long. But I did have a chip for quite a long time, because I felt that there were people that I might have maybe started my training journey with that had obviously then gone on and qualified, and that's what I really wanted to do. So yeah, I think that's it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for giving up such a late evening. We've done 2 of these podcasts back to back, guys. So it's been a lot of talking and a long time that me and Lyndsay have been together tonight. I'm hoping this has been a bit of an insight to who Lyndsay is as a person and why she joined council and why these things are on. Next month, you get to hear Lyndsay interview myself. And then the following 2 months, you'll hear Sarah and you'll hear Kim, and then the rest of the team as the year progresses along. I hope this has been something interesting and insightful. If it is, and you've picked this as a link from social media, if you can stick a comment in to let us know what you think. If you're on if you're watching this, because we're now putting this out into the real world where you can see what we look like, stick a comment in. If there's things that you like or dislike about it, we would change these. This is something brand new and scary to us as well, as what it is to you. But the future's looking really good, and the future of the profession, the future of BVNA. We've got lots of exciting things coming up in the pipeline. And if you'd like to know more of what was happening, if you look at last week's President podcast, you'll get to see what was happening on that as well. So yeah, all I can say now is thank you so much, Lyndsay, for letting us a peek into your real world. And we'll see you next week for Meet the Team again. So we'll see you next month for another Meet the Team, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Craig.
See you soon. Take care. Bye now.
Bye.